Urgent. The Ukrainian Armed Forces superweapon. The results of its work are impressive. It not only turns everything into scrap metal, but also disables enemy equipment even from a distance. Wow. Meanwhile, the world is comparing nuclear weapons. Ukraine is in the game too. Are our forces really preparing to unveil it? Putin is urgently preparing the Burevestnik. NATO is giving its first signal. All this in our episode of Hell Point. The planet is erupting in applause because of this. Ukraine has done something for the first time. It launched a swarm of drones controlled by artificial intelligence. Even top engineers were left speechless. Even Putin says it's impressive. Russian electronic warfare systems are simply helpless when the Calibri is in the air. It avoids any threat and completes its mission flawlessly. And on top of that, there's the Ukrainian HIMARS. This air defense system is a true steel curtain in the sky, trapping targets inside and destroying them one by one. It's being shown for the first time. You really have to see this.
A swarm of AI-powered drones has already entered the battlefield. At a new frontier of military operations, Ukraine is using technology that allows groups of drones to communicate and make decisions independently of their operator.
According to Western journalists, Ukraine is using artificial intelligence in military operations so that groups of drones can coordinate their actions to attack well-defended Russian positions. Military experts claim that operations involving large and small groups of drones represent a new stage in the war. Such innovations make it possible to deploy dozens or even thousands of drones simultaneously to overcome any air defense systems, whether protecting a city or a specific military facility.
If it becomes possible to scale up production and so-called swarm attacks occur, meaning when a swarm is flying, then of course you can shoot down part of the swarm, but you can't shoot down 100 drones flying at the same time. Well, in that case, of course, there will be major disruptions to the power grid, significant disruptions to the transportation system, and the destruction of normal life will begin. We've actually seen this already this year with air transport, and now we're seeing it with railways. This drone war has made Russia weak. It's impossible to deploy air defense systems everywhere. There simply aren't enough of them.
Analysts assure that this innovative technology is a harbinger of the future of warfare. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian company itself, which developed the unique software, is lifting the veil of secrecy over what can be expected from the new military development. It turns out that a swarm of strike drones, like a living organism, analyzes what is happening in real time and makes decisions based on the situation.
The drones can decide which one will strike first and adapt to the circumstances. For example, if one of them runs out of battery power, Ukrainian soldiers began using this technology about a year ago to lay mines. Since then, it has been used to strike Russian troops, equipment, and infrastructure.
And it must be admitted, they use it extremely effectively. In the Kremlin, just hearing the phrase drone swarm makes their knees tremble. Even the enemy admits that they simply have nothing to counter such advanced Ukrainian weaponry.
It really is impressive.
By the way, if something goes off plan during such an autonomous operation, the system immediately hands control over to a human operator. Fortunately, another cutting-edge Ukrainian technology promises to help with this, the Calibri 13FR1. This is a so-called relay drone for FPV with autonomous navigation and resistance to electronic warfare. It's a cheap alternative to the Chinese DJI, which is actively used on the front lines.
At the very beginning of the Russian invasion, Russia was striking Ukraine with missiles and drones almost unopposed, and Ukraine couldn't respond. There was practically nothing to strike back with on Russian territory. But now, as they say, here we are. Now Ukraine has drones that are taking out Russian industry, and Ukraine has acquired long-range missiles. Well, as Putin says, the special military operation is going according to plan. Apparently, this is part of the plan too.
The new domestically produced UAV is not just a drone. It's an entire system that includes 2 carrier relays, a ground control station, and additional antennas. This approach makes it possible to ensure a stable communication channel at the tactical level. The drone's design is modular, allowing damaged components to be quickly replaced right on the battlefield. Among the advantages of the Ukrainian Calibri are its resistance to strong winds, low temperatures, and the ability to operate both during the day and at night.
When they are taught to interact with each other, when they are taught to guide one another to targets or, let's say, to cover each other, just like we see at various Chinese shows, where drones perform all sorts of beautiful formations in the sky. It will be the same thing, only in war. That would, of course, be an absolute nightmare, and it's completely unclear how one could fight against it if drones are taught to think, so to speak, to make decisions, especially if drones are taught to make decisions to engage targets. That would be a total and utter horror.
How does the Kremlin respond to all this? Instead of developing new types of air defense systems, Putin is putting all the efforts of the Russian defense industry into creating more and more methods of terror. In particular, he is actively improving his Shaheds, teaching them to strike residential buildings of peaceful Ukrainians with ever greater precision. This unpleasant news for us was recently shared by a military radio technology specialist with the call sign Flash. According to him, Russian mopeds have recently become much more dangerous and deadly.
A recent find, as you can see, the antennas are placed at the edges of the wings. Modems and cameras, unfortunately, unlike the circuit boards, can't be found. They break apart and burn. For those who don't know, this is the new version of the Shahed, which can be controlled online from Russia, can conduct reconnaissance, and can even attack moving targets.
However, it's worth noting that the Ukrainian defense industry had already started improving Ukraine's air defense system long before this. By staying ahead of the enemy, our engineers are already actively developing our own version of the HIMARS. The foreign rocket system has proven its effectiveness on the battlefield, its high accuracy, and its ability to operate over long distances. This is exactly what we need. For Ukraine, having its own counterpart to American weaponry means not only reducing dependence on Allied supplies, but also the ability to adapt the system to modern warfare conditions and the specifics of combat operations. For now, the technical specifications of the Ukrainian system are not being disclosed. However, experts suggest that we are talking about a wheeled platform with high mobility, capable of launching guided missiles over distances of hundreds of kilometers. So it's high time for the occupiers to start preparing for new surprises from the Ukrainian armed forces.
The world is on the brink of a third world war. An entire arsenal of nuclear weapons is ready to be unleashed right now. China has showcased it. Beijing has completely lost its mind. The Kremlin is playing along, and Taiwan is pushing them to make the first move. It's hard to believe. Behind the scenes, the triad of dictators has agreed to deliver this mega strike, a danger of unprecedented scale. Are the US powerless? More on this in the following report.
"80 years ago, the world celebrated victory over tyranny. On September 3, 2025, in Tiananmen Square, China holds the largest military parade in history, officially dedicated to the 80th anniversary of Japan's surrender in World War II. And before the eyes of the whole world, a new alliance is being strengthened, which seems to be preparing for a third one. At the head of this spectacle, China's leader Xi Jinping declares peace or war. The choice is up to the world. 26 heads of state have arrived in Beijing to witness this show. But only two, the dictators Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, sit side by side with Xi Jinping, accompanying him at every step.
Only by treating each other as equals, living in harmony, and supporting one another, can all countries and nations maintain collective security, eliminate the root causes of war, and prevent the recurrence of historical tragedies.
Donald Trump wrote on Truth Social that it was the United States that gave China tremendous support to help it defend its freedom from a very unfriendly foreign invader. The President of the United States wished China and Xi Jinping a wonderful holiday and asked them to pass along his warmest regards to Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un, since everyone is taking part in a conspiracy against the United States of America. Putin's aide Ushakov immediately responded that the leaders of Russia, North Korea, and China were not organizing any conspiracies.
No one was plotting any conspiracies. No one was scheming anything. No conspiracies at all.
At the same time, on the sidelines of the parade, Putin and Kim Jong-un are negotiating fraternal support. They held a bilateral meeting, traveling to it in the same car, and spoke tete-a-tete for more than 2.5 hours, while the entourage of the North Korean dictator wiped down the chairs and furniture he touched and took away the cup he drank from. The deployment of thousands of North Korean soldiers to the Kursk region to liberate it from Ukraine is called a duty by Kim and heroism by Putin.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, as Russian missiles and drones fly toward Ukraine, China is showcasing an arsenal of weapons in Beijing, ready for the war of the future. A complete nuclear triad, land, sea, and air. The DF-5C intercontinental missile, which is claimed to be able to strike any point on the planet. A laser capable of destroying missiles and drones, and underwater drones that are currently being closely monitored in Taiwan. The Chinese copy faster than the US develops. That's how the parade was assessed by Defense Express. Analysts write that only some of the drones demonstrated in Beijing are partially visual copies of American solutions, while others are already independent developments in this field. The names of the vast majority of the models, as well as their technical specifications and capabilities, are currently unknown, as is their development status. Additionally, Russia and China have signed an agreement on the construction of the Power of Siberia 2 gas pipeline through the territory of Mongolia. Its capacity is 50 billion cubic meters of gas per year. The flows of Arctic gas that previously went to Europe are now being redirected to China. The largest military parade in China's history has concluded. 80,000 doves of peace and just as many balloons were released into the sky. But is this just a celebration of a historic victory or a rehearsal for a new war?
This is something never seen before, a drone with a machine gun on the front line. The enemy is definitely not prepared to face such an arsenal. For the occupiers, this will become a real hell. No trench, no fortified position can guarantee their safety anymore. The revenge of Ukrainian defenders is already very close. Ukrainian defenders hint the real show will begin right on the battlefield. And it's quite possible that as soon as tomorrow, this Predator drone will wipe out entire Russian companies. How does it work and what can it do? Don't miss the first details. Coming up next.
Precision fire from a machine gun. But it's not a human shooting, it's a robot. This is the new reconnaissance and strike system, the Droid TWW12.7. Accuracy is being tested during trials at the training ground.
Well, as we can see, the test was carried out well. There was no need for additional aiming, because the very first burst took out our Kherson friend.
This system was created to support infantry on the battlefield and to conduct reconnaissance.
What tasks was this drone designed for?
Primarily for fire support of units and for reconnaissance missions. That is when we can go out, scout, and if necessary strike. The current range is 22 kilometers. The maximum speed of this model is 7 kilometers per hour. This applies both to hard surfaces like asphalt and to dirt. Field terrain, yes.
Control is carried out remotely via a tablet. And to hit the target, the system is equipped with a ballistic calculator.
We know that the target is, say, 800 meters away from us. We set 800 meters in the ballistic calculator. The sight is programmatically adjusted downward on the tablet screen, and we aim directly at the target.
The Browning M2 machine gun module operates in tandem with modern electronics.
Yes, on this combat module we use artificial intelligence to recognize targets and personnel, to aim at them. It helps us with this, and also to lock onto targets. So it's quite a handy assistant in the operator's hands, making it more comfortable firstly to track targets, secondly to move around, and thirdly to engage those targets. These targets can be either personnel or
non-personnel.
Best wishes.
These capabilities make the robotic ground complex universal, from reconnaissance and logistics to direct participation in combat.
We use drones for logistics and we use them as engineering robots. We have several combat drones, some with a slightly smaller caliber, some with a different configuration, but right now we're trying to use them widely because, as I said, the war is moving forward. Every 6 months something changes and we always have to take that step. But that step must always be ahead of the enemy, ahead of everyone.
The Droid TWW12.7 is an example of how technology becomes a weapon that saves the lives of Ukrainian soldiers and destroys the enemy. Yuri Lozenko, Volodymyr Kravchuk, Army TV for Ukraine Marathon United News.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
NATO is already knocking at Ukraine's door. The most advanced samples of Western weaponry are heading straight to the front lines. The armed forces of Ukraine are preparing for the first combat trials of machines that, until yesterday, were mentioned only in classified reports. The Kremlin is in panic and complete uncertainty. The enemy doesn't know from which direction the strike will come. Which systems are preparing for their high-profile debut, and what will they bring to the battlefield? Next, we'll reveal all the details and show you exclusive footage.
Tested in Ukraine, soon weapons without this label are unlikely to be favored in the West. After all, when the largest war in Europe since World War II is taking place, laboratory testing has lost its meaning. Any development, any prototype can now be tested directly on the battlefield. The defense cluster Brave One has officially announced the launch of the Test in Ukraine program. Now, foreign arms manufacturers will be able to test new products directly on the front lines. Companies will send their developments to Ukraine, conduct online training on how to use them, and then wait for Ukrainian troops to test them and send back feedback.
A large number of private companies that are now engaged in armaments are considered to be in the arms sector, have made a significant contribution to this direction, and now there is a critical need for coordinated interaction between these companies. Thanks to such testing grounds, we can say that interaction is taking place, which will lead to more collaborations. And this can produce local products that will work even better.
First and foremost, we're talking about unmanned systems, electronic warfare complexes, as well as missile systems.
This drone has already been tested by us.
This drone has already deployed more than 180 mines. It has performed quite well. And as you can see, it returned.
Today,
other drones you see here are kamikaze drones. Basically, it is universal, and kamikaze drones deliver payloads, especially small ones.
According to Mikhailo Fedorov, the Minister of Digital Transformation, such an influx of partners and the mass dispatch of equipment for testing in Ukraine will help to find solutions more quickly, ultimately to change the course of the war.
The armed conflict is currently in an acute phase, which gives corporations the opportunity to test their weapon systems in real combat conditions. Most of these technologies include drones, control systems, data processing and collection, intelligence information, as well as means of detecting and countering drones, mainly through the use of electronic warfare tools, but also with the use of air defense systems.
At the same time, experts say, the Test in Ukraine program not only helps to test developments on the battlefield, but also to understand how Western weapons cope with countering a potential enemy, since Russia has been officially recognized at the NATO level as one of the main threats to the alliance.
This gives them an advantage, opportunities
to thoroughly test their own ongoing developments against the formidable Russian army, to meticulously study the intricate Russian defensive systems, and to effectively adapt their various weapons in order to precisely counter the advanced technologies that Russia is currently using on the battlefield, and quite possibly those that the People's Republic of China may potentially use in the foreseeable future.
Participants in the program have the opportunity to test their developments not only at the front, but also deep in the rear of the Russian Federation, if we are talking about long-range weapons. Here we see both counteraction against Russian models of the Russian Federation and the ability to identify targets using artificial intelligence, as well as the direct capability to destroy the required object.
Such opportunities exist. Of course, the main advantage is realized through the use of long-range drones. It is precisely various factories that are being struck.
In addition, manufacturers will be able to test their products directly on site. That is, by coming to Ukraine themselves. This will allow for changes to be made in real time. There is also the option to entrust testing to Brave One specialists. Then the experts will conduct the testing themselves and provide partners with a detailed report of the results. And this work is already underway, particularly in the field of UAVs.
Many of these drones, as far as I understand, are classified. For example, Vibed, and also Victor. Both are used for reconnaissance, surveillance, and data collection. This conflict is the perfect testing ground for weapons.
In an interview, Artem Moroz, head of investor relations at Brave One, told Reuters that many companies have already shown interest in the Test in Ukraine program, though of course without going into details. So, who and what exactly is planning to test in Ukraine? The Russian Federation will find out in real time.
Putin has played his scariest trump card, the Burevestnik, and this has raised the alarm. This missile could turn half the world into a wasteland. The tension is rising with every minute. One wrong move and a nuclear mushroom cloud will rise over the planet. This deadly weapon could strike Russia itself first. Is Putin really preparing to blow up his own people in an attempt to intimidate the world? Next, the whole truth about the new nuclear threat.
Russia is preparing new tests of one of its 5 types of so-called wonder weapons. We're talking about the Burevestnik missile, which the US has dubbed the Flying Chernobyl, all because of its nuclear engine.
The missile is extremely dangerous because if its nuclear reactor is completely destroyed, for instance, if it's shot down from the sky or crashes violently, it could potentially cause a widespread environmental disaster, contaminating many vast areas. And truly, no sane or reasonable person in their right mind wants that to happen. The Americans had already abandoned this anti-ecological project.
Nuclear weapons expert Deka Eveleth drew attention to the fact that the Kremlin is preparing to test its so-called unparalleled weapon. Evidence for this comes from the increased activity at the Pankovo test site on the Novaya Zemlya archipelago. A direct indication of a possible test is that the US has sent an Air Force radiation reconnaissance aircraft to Novaya Zemlya. This aircraft is equipped with sensors to monitor nuclear tests. Later, Newsweek reported that the aircraft took off from the British airbase Mildenhall and circled over the Barents Sea for about 14 hours.
If it goes off, it will contaminate everything around. When the Russians explicitly state that they are planning to conduct a significant test, energetically waving their wings, an American reconnaissance aircraft or a specialized radiation-level monitoring plane is immediately dispatched to that specific area, promptly begins circling, and meticulously records absolutely everything that is happening.
Development of the Burevestnik began in Russia back in 2001. However, it was Putin who spoke about it, and he only did so in 2018, making a big show of it. He claimed that its range was unlimited and that its flight trajectory could be unpredictable. During this time, Russia tested the Burevestnik 13 times and every attempt ended in failure. Although one is actually considered successful, that time the Russian Wunderwaffe managed to fly as far as 35 kilometers.
Out of 13 launches, all were unsuccessful. One particular launch, when the missile successfully flew a remarkable distance of 35 kilometers in just 2 minutes, is widely considered to be the most successful and significant, primarily because during that specific time, the team meticulously managed to accurately record all the essential parameters and critical data they had originally wanted to capture and analyze. There is also a theory that when the major accident happened in Nusek, that accident, when people died and there was a significant radiation release, one of the versions is that it was connected to this Burevestnik missile.
Putin didn't bring out the Burevestnik and his nuclear arsenal for no reason. This is yet another tool for intimidation.
There's a whole frenzy being stirred up around this. Russia is terrifying, huge, formidable, has a ton of weapons. It has 5,500 nuclear warheads, though no one really knows what condition they're in. No one knows except for the leadership. Then the deadline for Trump's ultimatum is approaching, and something needs to be done. That's why they closed the airspace over Kapustin Yar, so that everyone wonders what's going to happen there. Is it just the Burevestnik missile that's going to be launched? Or is it something else that's making the whole world tense up? Then they announce that they're about to test the Burevestnik missile. Or...
Can the Russians actually conduct a Burevestnik test? They probably can. Will it be successful? In Russia, they'll say yes. But as the statistics from previous tests show, only the Russians themselves are likely to suffer from this launch.
Putin hid this secret weapon for years, but the RDK accidentally discovered it and immediately exposed it. The secret electronic warfare systems with which the Kremlin tried to intimidate NATO are now fully exposed, and the dictator himself has fallen into a trap. The technologies have become accessible, the defense is falling apart at the seams, and drones are already preparing to deliver a precise and devastating strike directly at Putin's bunker. More about this massive failure and all its consequences in the following report.
They call their electronic warfare systems the best in the world.
Russia has some of the most powerful electronic warfare systems in the world.
The Russian occupiers threaten NATO, claiming that all of the alliance's aviation, space, radar, and other systems will be disabled. The enemy's electronic warfare systems are actively operating on the front lines, and because of their effects, Ukrainian drones often fail to reach their targets. A drone control channel has been detected. When detected, we activate jamming. But is Russian electronic warfare really as powerful as it's made out to be? And what can be used to disable it?
Russian electronic warfare is actually functional, and due to the large number of devices they've produced for themselves, they are able to create some obstacles. But these obstacles only apply to the areas that were actively developed in other countries, that is, in Western countries.
These exclusive shots with data on enemy electronic warfare systems were shown to us by representatives of the Russian Volunteer Corps. The soldiers, who have been fighting against Putin's regime since August 2022, declassified the system parameters and gained access to important information.
The work took about 8 months. It was very difficult. We didn't just involve a large number of people, but the result actually even exceeded our expectations.
The ship-based station Ancharke, the Russian electronic warfare complex Trada-2S, the coastal station Ozone. These are relatively new, as the Kremlin's henchmen boast powerful electronic warfare systems designed to disable satellites, suppress navigation and communications. However, in reality, they are vulnerable, assure the OGDRK.
Ozone is a complete and comprehensive system.
Ozone is a system that operates using the so-called over-the-horizon method. There are a lot of technical aspects involved, simply related to basic elementary physics. This system allows for influence on targets beyond the horizon, below the line of sight, using certain tools. But the system is extremely raw. It absolutely cannot withstand high temperatures. And if the humidity level exceeds 68%, that's it. It stops working.
ORDK explains that any electronic warfare system is not just hardware, it's about modes, frequencies, heat dissipation, and algorithms. By learning the parameters of radio-electronic complexes, you can deceive the enemy, blind them, and an electronic warfare system without vision loses its power.
We managed
to understand the entire architecture. These are all institutes, vectors, and direct scientific development. How this is applied, what plans are made, where it is tested, and what is needed for it. The economy, the entire system as a whole.
They also know the routes along which the occupiers move their powerful electronic warfare systems. And this definitely impacts the security of electronic warfare. After all, Ukrainian drones and missiles will be able to avoid radio-electronic traps and destroy targets in enemy territory more effectively.
Undoubtedly, it will be much easier. Certainly, it will be much easier. In any case, when we understand what the enemy is doing and how they are doing it, we can prepare some countermeasures in advance. By intercepting certain signals, by intercepting traffic, we understand that this particular system is deployed here.
Alexander explains that the operation to declassify the EW data was made possible thanks to the so-called mole farm and the people themselves who mostly worked for money.
In reality, there are people who perform some minor functions within a large operation. These are people who work in the Russian Ministry of Defense, people who serve in various units, people who work at test ranges. This also includes people working in research institutes involved in development. Almost everything is done for money, let's put it that way.
Ordeka also knows the names of those who implemented their formulas in the electronic warfare system.
We know about all these people. Their surnames, first names, passport details, and where they work. All these people, in any case, are guilty of this. They are responsible for the shelling, they are directly involved in the war, and all of them must be held accountable.
Obviously, many of our viewers have a question. Why reveal all this information? The enemy could use it to improve their electronic warfare system. However, experts assure us that this isn't something you can just put on a flash drive or load into a magazine. It takes years, people, and billions of dollars to do that.
The information is already there, so that the information is already available, and to rebuild the logic and structure of the system's architecture itself. Russia can no longer shut down dozens of scientific institutes, replace staff, and there are tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of people involved. They will no longer be able to catch up in the conditions of modern warfare, where everything is developing very dynamically. That is, the means that were used on the front 3 or 4 months ago may already be completely ineffective today.
Experts say that Russia should start thinking about its own security. All the more so because such operations inside the aggressor country will continue in the future.
We will try to do it more often, with better quality and on a larger scale.
Mikhailo Manilyuk, Alexander Krulikov, Serhiy Kilimnik, Podrobnosti, Intermarathon TV channel, Yiden News.
And that's not all for today. This was me, Drina Hutsakalo. Even more hot news from the front in our next broadcast. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe and hit the like button. See you soon.